people come in later, I can get them for you. Okay, so you are now live. I'm going to do the little lead in.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jim Roop. I'm with Monrovia Growers, and I've been asked to talk today at Waters about fall color. So we're not just going to talk about trees and shrubs that turn color and lose their leaves. We're going to talk about some annuals that are very showy in the fall too, grasses, plants that have berries, just some plants that their main attribute where they really shine and present themselves well is in the fall time. So we're lucky enough here in Prescott, our elevation, that we do have seasons, 4 seasons. Spring being our windy season, and summer our monsoons, a little cool, not too hot, and then the fall where we have enough chill and stuff that we get a nice fall color to it. Then the winter time, which isn't really that cold compared to many parts of the country, but we get enough cold to have a taste of winter, a little bit of snow, etc. So we're very fortunate where we live at our elevation, that not too hot, not too cold. There's quite a few things that we can grow here actually. So just, I'm not going to go into this in depth at all regarding why do things change, leaves fall, why do leaves turn color. Real basic, it's just that as the daylights get shorter and there's less sun, the chlorophyll, they stop producing chlorophyll, which makes the leaves green. And once all the chlorophyll vacates and leaves the leaves, you're left with the chemicals that produce your yellows and your reds and sometimes browns. Like in oak trees, you might get more browns than you do some other colors. But that's basically the reason, is the daylight gets shorter and it stops producing chlorophyll, and all the green, which is from the chlorophyll, leaves the leaves. And so that's really the basic reason you get the change of foliage color. Some things can affect how good the color is. Moisture, rain, dryness, drought, things like that can have an effect, cold, but overall, really 80% is just the daylight changing. Some years, if we get a real quick cold, can affect things like Virginia creeper. I have a lot of Virginia creeper on which I'll talk about, on my fences. And the previous 2 falls, we had these early hard freezes, like mid-October, even a little earlier. I live up at a mountain club, and one year they were green, just starting to show a little bit of color, and then we had a hard freeze, like 25, 26 degrees. They went from green to black the next day. Last year was a little better. I had like 3 or 4 days of good color. Then we had a really hard freeze, and they, they froze off real quick. This year is perfect. We've had a warm October, a little bit warmer than normal. Pleasant days in the high 70s, low 80s, nights down, and I've had some nights down in the low 30s already, but a lot of nights in the high 30s, low 40s. So just perfect for that change of color where you're not getting hard freezes that can knock off the leaves real quick once they've turned color. So this year has just been fantastic for fall color, and I think as you've been driving around, you've really been probably noticing the color we have here right now. Things now that I've been really noticing are the honey locusts have a lot of color on them right now. The Virginia creeper are in their prime right now. You see a lot of those on fences or maybe even climbing up a pine tree, things like that with the brilliant orange red. They're in full display right now. Some of the native things like the cottonwoods in the riparian areas, if you go down to the lakes or any riparian area, you see the big Fremont cottonwoods. They're in full glory right now. Choke cherries, native choke cherries. I have some of those in my yard. They're in full yellow phase of their with the blueberries on the choke cherries, so which the robins love. So yeah, right now it's just, and then we have more coming on. The end of falls, the big splash at the end is going to be the pear trees coming on, and when they turn, they're kind of a burgundy fall foliage here in a couple of weeks. I think with this cold we're going to be getting this coming week, that's really going to spur the ornamental pears to really do their thing. So yeah, it's been kind of a long, we're kind of, with all the, in town especially, you know, with all the different things that are planted, we kind of have a long fall color season because there's so many different types of plants that have been planted that, you know, some things they turn color a little bit earlier, and then you progress to another tree that's turning color, and then towards the end, coming up, we have more things turning color. So we kind of have a good long month and a half of where you start to see things turn color in our area, which is nice. So, as I said in this little cover sheet I gave you, it's the perfect season. Fall is one of my favorite times here. It's just temperatures are warm. It's not too cold. Generally not windy. Just a great time to be out in the garden, and more importantly, it's a great time to plant stuff. Our soils are still warm. Relatively warm speaking. So if you plant anything in September or October, there's still plenty of time for the roots to grow. You may not get much growth on the top of anything at all, but the roots are growing, which is really important. So come springtime, when they want to come out of dormancy, you've got roots that have already started to grow a bit, and it really helps them push along in the springtime for more vigorous growth and kind of get a good head start before the heat of summer comes, or even the dryness of our fall, our spring. Late spring can be the winds and stuff kind of dry. So yeah, fall is a really good time to plant. It's beneficial for us. It's a good time. It's not hot. It's a good time to be outside gardening, and the plants love it too. And whether let me ask this first. Anyone? We have any kind of new people here in the last year? Okay. Been here 2 years or less? Okay, awesome. Well, welcome. So, when you're designing your garden or making changes to it, always think ahead of the seasons. Because when you're planting a garden, you kind of want, as much as you can, have a 4-season garden. Winter gets a little tougher, of course, but it's still possible. But fall is definitely a good time where you can extend that color season. We all think of late spring, summer, the color season where everything is blooming and looks beautiful and wonderful, which it does and which it can. But fall, if you kind of plan ahead when you're designing a garden or making changes to it, and you can just make little changes every year to your garden, etc. Is think about plants to put in for the fall that will give you color, extend your season, maybe make your neighbors envious that you still have some pretty stuff going on. Because fall is still a good time. We can still be outside, we can still be out enjoying our yard. So why not have colorful stuff out there to look at and enjoy? So we're going to kind of jump in, and if you have any questions while we're going, just go ahead and ask them, because if you're like me, I forget 10 seconds later what I was going to ask. So, just raise your hand and we'll answer any questions as we go along. So like I said, we're going to talk about a good broad range of plants that have their attribute shines in the fall. And we're going to start out with some of our annuals and perennials. You know, I think we all think about mums. You know, that, you know, if there's a flower that signifies fall color flowers, it's a mum. You know, your grandma planted them, your mom probably planted them, etc. If you're from the Midwest or back east, you know, mums are huge back there. Mums, they're a perennial here. They come back every year. Only thing I will warn you is, not only do we love them, deer love them too. They don't love them when they're green, but they love them when the flowers come out. So I will warn you about mums with deer. Have them up on your deck or somewhere where the deer can't get to them, because they're no idiots. You know, they wait till the flowers are blooming or they're really heavily budded, and they'll come and eat them. So they do that with a lot of plants actually. But you know, mums are great. There's nothing shows more color than a mum in the fall time, with a good burst of color that lasts for, you know, 4, 6, maybe even up to 8 weeks of just good color on them. And like I say, they are perennials, so they can come back every year. Asters are another fall perennial. Now when I say perennial, you know, they die to the ground and they'll come back the next year. Asters are a great fall plant. A lot of your other annuals or a lot of your other perennials have kind of done their thing, but asters, they're a good perennial for the fall to give you a good boost of color. They come in, you can get whites, you can get blues, lavenders, pinks. This one's more of I'm a guy, so a little color, purple, thank you, yeah. I was thinking magenta, purple, whatever, but I guess this is what we call magenta actually. So anyways, asters are a great fall perennial. This little guy, just an annual, ornamental kale. Great container plant in the fall time. They come with the white centers, pink centers like this, but just a great annual for the fall time. They will take some fair amount of cold too. So what's nice is with some of the fall color stuff, you know, things that will take a little bit of our early freezes, like coming up this week, you know, we could get to 28, 29 degrees in some areas. That's not going to bother this at all. So it's nice. And then it's more of a cool season annual. You don't see these in the springtime or summertime because they just tend to bolt. It's, you know, related to the cabbage, so it just bolts out in the seed. So the cooler season is when these really shine. And you can use these in color bowls, like with snapdragons or pansies, something like that, to make really good color bowls or container stuff. And speaking of pansies and violas, there's a snapdragon in the center there. Violas, pansies, they're basically an annual here. Not to say you couldn't get them to live through the spring and summer, but they're just not going to look that well, so just take them out. But they, you know, you can have a foot of snow on them, you can have 5 degrees, the pansies will come back. You're going to go look at them, they look totally dead, they're just wilted and melted to the ground after a hard freeze. Then about 10 or 11 o'clock that same morning, when it gets a little bit warmer, they start perking up, or if it's a cold spell, you know, they could be like that for a few days. And then when we kind of get some warmer weather again, then they'll pop back up and they look fine again. So pansies are one of our, and snapdragons, that pretty well go through our winters just fine. And like I say, they're more of a cool season plant. Snapdragons I've seen over spring, over summer, okay. Some people will do that with them. I think you're just best to take them out and then put fresh ones in the following season in the fall. So anyways, violas, pansies, snapdragons, great fall color combinations.
Are the pansies and snapdragons deer food also,
Yeah, they'll eat the flowers, yeah.
including snapdragons?
And I've noticed in the fall that deer, they get really kind of trying to fatten up on stuff. So stuff they left alone all summer for me, you know, it's all of a sudden, I even saw some deer eating some of my about it next anyways, my autumn sage. I've never seen deer. It was a young deer, so, you know.
A stupid one.
He didn't know what he was probably eating actually, or she, whatever. But it's the first time I've ever seen deer just kind of, but they didn't mow it down or anything. But this is another great, well, this is one of my favorite plants here in Prescott just because it's bulletproof. Nothing seems to like it or eat it. Is the autumn sage. This one is white. They come in purple, they come in red, they come in pinks. They have two-tone colors. It's just a great perennial in our area. Takes a lot of heat and full sun. They even grow these down in the Phoenix area, Tucson area, so that kind of gives you an idea how much heat they can take. And they can take a lot of cold too. They do pretty well down to zero, which about as cold as we get. You know, maybe every 10 years or so we might get a little bit below that, but they usually come back. Yeah, question?
Is this also called salvia?
Yeah, question was, is this also called salvia? Yeah, this is a salvia. It's called Salvia greggii, commonly known as autumn sage, even though it blooms late spring, summer, as well into the fall, but it's called autumn sage. So yeah, this is a great plant, and like I say, generally nothing bothers it, which is really nice.
How large does it get?
How large does it get? Most of them will get about 2 feet on average. I
5?
prune mine back every year. Yeah, 2 by 2.
Okay.
And I prune mine back every year, usually in February. Give them a good prune. If you have water around, they'll reseed really easy, which can be good if you want to. And what's kind of cool, I've noticed in my yard, since they reseed, you can kind of get some variation because it's from seed, sexual production basically, so you get some variation. And I've got a couple in my yard that have a real velvet red color, which there's nothing on the market for I've seen, and I have one that's kind of a white with a pink tone, two-tone to it. So yeah, you can get a lot of variation with some of the seeds that come up on it.
Is it a full sun?
Question is it a full sun? Yes, full sun, yep. Take a little bit of shade, but full sun. And another nice attribute of the autumn sage, especially asters are another really good one, is it's a good source of late pollinator food. You get less and less things flowering as we go into the colder months, but my autumn sage, I have probably 15 or 20 of them. They're all still in color. I'm still seeing bees coming up to them, hummingbirds, a few butterflies still straggling around coming up to them. So it's a great late season pollinator plant as well.
I have some in my yard. Does it help to deadhead them to keep, does that affect rebloom at all?
Question is, do you need to deadhead them? The short answer is no, you do not have to. I think it is better, at least once during the season, to give them a light 20%, about 25% shave down.
Okay.
I notice mine do better when I do that. They'll come out, look fuller again, and nice, good. They'll put up a lot more,
Okay.
and they'll look better if you do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, okay, next we'll get into some shrubs. Shrubs are really, they're the backbone of your landscape. So, if you don't have shrubs, because shrubs can give you some height, they can give you some texture, they can give you color. So shrubs are really important to put in your landscape in your yard. Some shrubs are focal points, you want them right out front. Some shrubs, maybe they do their thing one time a year, they look really good. Say you just take a lilac, for example. But after that, or forsythia is probably the best example. To me, not the prettiest shrub once it's done blooming. But if you have a forsythia and it's kind of in the background, when it does bloom, it pops, it shows, it does its thing. Then when it's done, you have other shrubs around it that kind of mask it, and then they start doing their thing. So it's kind of really important when you're thinking about putting shrubs. What does this shrub do? How long does it do it for? What does it look like when it's done doing its blooming, etc. All those things kind of you want to take into account. Where am I going to put those in my landscape? So we'll start out. I know on your sheet it's alphabetical order, but my plants aren't alphabetical order, so I'll try. This is a chokecherry, brilliancy chokecherry. I think it's a highly underused plant in our area. So, put it on the vanity chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, brilliancy chokecherry, aronia. It's not the same as our native chokecherry, which is a prunus that we have here, which is also called chokecherry. That's the thing with common names. Common names can mean a lot of different things in different parts of the country, so that's why we use a lot of botanical names, because that narrows it down scientifically to that's what this plant is. But in certain parts of the country, they call this a chokecherry common name. So, but this is more of a compact one. Average gets up to about 8 feet, maybe 10 feet. Some chokecherries can get up to 20 feet or so. You can keep it a little smaller if you want, but it gets brilliant red fall color to it, and it has berries, the red berries at the same time. So this is kind of a multi-season shrub. You got nice white flowers, because this white flowers are going to produce these clusters of red berries. So you get the white flowers in the springtime, and then you get then they'll turn into berries in the fall, start showing their red color. As you get into later summer, the berries will start showing red, and they hang on a long time all the way into winter. And then you get the red color. Some of the ones out there were starting to show some color already. But yeah, it's just starting. But so this is a great, and this would be this is a plant you want to put probably a little bit farther back because it gets tall and big, so you don't want it right in front of your yard, etc., where it's going to hide stuff, etc. You kind of want it back a little further. That's going to kind of be a backdrop, a background. Question?
Yes, are those berries okay for children and animals?
Yeah, these are non-poisonous. Yeah, our native chokecherry with the yellow foliage. That if you have any native landscaping in your yard, or you moved in an area where you have probably some oaks, things like that, you probably might have some native chokecherries in there. The pit is poisonous. The flesh, it's a very tiny berry with a good sized pit. I have one out of my deck. I actually eat them. I spit out the pits. They're kind of bitter tasting. Some people make jam out of them. You just don't use the pits. But you got to add a lot of sugar to make it really tasteful. But
So is that a good bird bush then?
yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And once it's established, it's pretty drought tolerant. It's a native species to the United States. I call it moderate water.
Is it deciduous?
Yes. So yeah, keep in mind, most anything I'm going to talk about on a plant that its leaves turn color, they're going to drop off and it's going to be deciduous for the most part on most things. Next, we'll get into, here's an exception to what I just said, Nandina, heavenly bamboo. It's an evergreen. They come in different varieties. Some are taller that do produce seeds, red berries, I mean. More popular is these more dwarf type. This one's called Tuscan Blue. There's one called Sienna Sunrise, Gulfstream, a lot of people may be familiar with. These are great foundation shrubs, especially that only get about 3 feet tall, maybe a couple feet wide at the most. The new growth in the spring comes out real vibrant red. They may green up a little bit in the summer, then they'll often put a spurt of new growth out late summer, early fall, which comes out red. Just as the season cools off, the temperatures get cooler, and the leaves tend to turn more of a red color in them. So very pretty. It's evergreen, doesn't lose its leaves. If it's real cold in the winter, you might get a 25-30% drop of leaves, possibly if it's really, really cold. Great container plant as well. Takes full sun. Will take a fair amount of shade. Filtered shade especially does okay. But yeah, the more sun you get it, you're going to get better leaf foliage color on it, etc. This variety here is called Firepower. It really turns a bright red in the fall, in the winter, winter time. The leaves really turn red.
What plant is that?
This is an Andina also.
It
Question-
is?
Yeah, question was what plant is it? Sorry, yeah, I'm still on Andinas. So, yeah, they come into different sizes and shapes. This one, there's nothing wrong with it. It also has these crinkly leaves to it, which some people think, oh, something's wrong with it. That crinkly leaf is caused by a virus. But in this case, it's a beneficial mutation, basically. It's caused this plant to be very dwarf. It doesn't get any more than about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall. And it has the crinkly leaves, and they turn the pretty brilliant red color in the cooler season. A great plant if you need something that's not too big in a smaller area, foundation-wise, or you could put it in a
Is it
container
just-
too if you want it.
Is it deciduous or
No.
evergreen,
It's evergreen too,
like
yeah.
the others? It looks
Unless
so
you get
different.
like I say, if it's really, really cold, long cold periods, you will get some leaf drop. It might have a little bit of a winter look to it, but overall, it's a pretty short period that it's like that.
Could you put it beneath
It's an
big trees? Can it be like part sun, part shade?
Yeah, the more sun it's going to get, probably the better color it's going to have. But it will take. I sell these down in Phoenix, Tucson, and they use them there as a filtered shade plant.
Okay.
All the Andinas, so they will take a fair amount of shade, filtered shade especially. Some of these plants I know Ken has talked about. I think he did a little video blast on plants for the fall, I think. Last
That was part of the podcast.
Yeah, so I know Ken has talked about some of these as well. This is called barberry. This is deciduous, loses its leaves. Any of you from cold parts of the country are very well aware of barberry and its attributes. It's especially known for its leaf color, usually being a red or an orangish red color. They come in different sizes. This is more of a dwarf one, about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall. Some are taller. They all lose their leaves, and they tend to, it can vary by variety, but as it gets cold, like one of the last ones, they'll start turning an orange color. And it can be pretty vibrant looking. I've seen some barberry when they're turning their, going out of the red phase into an orange phase, and they drop their leaves. So it can be actually pretty showy, the barberries, in the fall as well. But either way, it's got great foliage color. So, this is a multi-season plant to me. It's gonna go bare deciduous in the wintertime, no doubt. But once it starts leafing out in the spring, you got the red color to it. It's gonna last through the summer, well into fall, and then in the fall, you get a nice orange hue to it as well, which makes it attractive and gives it a different look.
Is that fairly dry color?
I would say moderate. Once it's established, now this one is an evergreen. It's called Euonymus Emerald and Gold. There are 2 reasons I wanted to talk about this. One, it's got pretty attractive variegated foliage to it, so it's pretty. It's evergreen. So in the spring, once it gets its yellow variegated foliage, it's attractive. In the summer, then in the fall, it's still got a nice. When things are starting to, some things lose their leaves, things like that, or lose their color. This is nice to have, kind of in a fall garden situation as well. But more importantly, if you come back here early December, you're going to see that it's just starting here a little bit. It's getting a pink tinge to it. And this will actually turn a good shade of pink to it as it gets real cold towards the winter. So it's a good late fall plant, and I'm talking like November, so when you start to see this plant show some pink, and you get into December, January, it's going to have a fair amount of pink to it. So this is kind of a good year-round plant, because you have the pink color in the cold months. It's going to transition out of the pink and go to the variegation in the spring months, all the way into fall. And this is low, it's evergreen, it is low, gets up to about 1.5 to 2 feet tall, and spreads out about 3 feet. And it has a sister, or a brother, whatever, called Emerald Gaily, which has green and white variegation. And it does the same thing with the pink foliage as well.
How, does it get 2.5 feet tall or wide?
Well, they kind of get about like that, just kind of spread out, mound out a little bit. So there are some ornaments that are tall. This one is more of a short one. Some are more ground cover type, actually. But yeah, this is pretty short.
What is their water requirement in the summer?
It does need water, yeah.
Like a lot, a little?
I would call it in the moderate range, not a lot, but it definitely has to get watered a couple times a week on a drip system. It's another one of my favorite plants. This is a cotoneaster. Cotoneasters come in a lot of different shapes. There's many varieties of them. This one's called Coral Beauty. This one is more of it's a good bank cover. A lot of people use it as a bank cover. It's a little bit lower. It'll probably get up to about 2 feet, spread out anywhere from 6 to 10 feet on its own if you just let it. This one is a little more drought tolerant. I call it moderate, but once it's established, it can take less water. Full sun, loves full sun. Gets red berries on it in the fall time. And then in the winter, starting in late fall, early winter, it'll kind of go into a burgundy phase. The foliage will kind of turn burgundy through the winter, and then it greens up in the summertime again. So it's a great, often used, like I say, for banks or just large areas where some people want something that's a large area, that's green and so forth. Question?
So those really spread out a lot.
I'm sorry?
They spread out a lot.
It does spread out, yes.
So you have to-
Yeah, that's why a lot of people like them for banks. Yeah, you don't want to plant this 2 feet from your sidewalk because that's not the right place for it. So.
Do any
So-
of these shrubs get real woody that you have to really severely cut them back to keep them more tender?
No, not that I mean, on sage, I definitely does well with cutting back every year. Like I said, I cut mine back down to this far, February, so that's when I cut them way back. Most of the shrubs I've talked about so far, no.
So that bottom one could actually go up a cliff, kind of a rocky.
Well, it might go down a cliff, but I don't think it would necessarily. If you trained it and helped it grow up, it could, yeah.
So started at the top.
Start at the top, yeah, yeah. And there's a couple other varieties. Some are coming in next week. There's one called Eichholz or Streeps Fiendling. They're low.
What's it called?
Streeps Fiendling or
Creep
Eichholz.
feeling?
Streeps, S-T-R-E-I-B, Streep. And it's a low one, only gets about 4 or 6 inches tall and spreads out. So there's different varieties of them, but we have some of those that I'm shipping in next week to them as well. So. So this is, what I'm talking about, this one, it's called Pyracantha. Pyracantha are known for their
Stickers.
stickers, their berries. And you're probably seeing some, I've been seeing some beautiful Pyracantha in the last couple of weeks going around town. Especially some of the orange berried ones, they're magnificent. They got like these big 10, 12-foot sprays of berries on the branches just sticking out. So yeah, Pyracantha, it's a plant that's evergreen. You get the white flowers in the spring that are showy for just 2 or 3 weeks while it's blooming. It's pretty showy. Nice green foliage, and then in the fall time, the berries start to show their pizzazz, starting in usually late September or early October is when you really start to notice the berries around town. They're not poisonous. They're edible. It tastes very good. Birds can get drunk off them, I guess. I've heard, late in the season after the berries have been on there a long time. But yeah, just for a good, real shot of fall color. It's not foliage color, but it's berry color is Pyracantha. And there's this one's called Victory. It's got more of a reddish They develop into more of a dark red. And then you have one called Yukon Bale, low boy. Those are orange berries.
Can that creep down the hill?
No, it's a big bush. It's a pyracanther place where you got a lot of room, and they kind of look best when you just kind of let them do their natural thing. They'll put out these big arms of growth, and then when they show the berry color, they're really pretty. Question?
What is it like if it's not trained to
Question is, what is it like if it's not trained? Yeah, it's a big sprawling bush. Yeah. So some people they'll train them along the fence, and you can, I see a lot of them are kept pruned into just tight bushes. You can do that too. You have to just kind of be careful when you do it at the right time, so you're not destroying the flowers or the berries, cutting all that off. So it's a little tricky if you still want to get the berries when you prune it into a tight bush like that. But it can be done, yeah. Or I've seen them done as hedges. So it takes really well to pruning, so you can prune it any way you want. But really it's a big shrub, kind of more of a sprawling type shrub. But it's pretty drought tolerant. It takes much heat as you can give it. If you've got a really hot spot, things like that, pyracanther works well.
Do all the varieties have thorns, or is there a thornless one?
There is no thornless one that I know of, yeah. And then some people like the pyracanther because they kind of act as a barrier to keep out, whatever you want to keep out.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Yep, this is Grollo sumac.
Which,
This one is known for its brilliant orangish red fall color. A lot of sumacs are native to a lot of different parts of the country. This one only gets to about 2 to 3 feet tall and as wide. It's deciduous, obviously. This one is probably one of the earlier ones to go into fall color. Thus it drops its leaves a little bit sooner than the others. But this is a great one to kind of use more of a, when using any type of your landscape, but a lot of people, especially if they're going more water-wise or drought tolerant, they'll go with the Grollo sumac. This one here, real pretty.
Does it tend to spread by runners?
Not that I'm aware of on this one. Some sumacs I believe can, like the staghorn sumac I know can.
It's spread by runners.
Yeah. The question, what question was, could it spread by runners? This one, not so much. Staghorn sumac, which I put on the list, there weren't any here to show, but the staghorn sumac is it's a taller one, 6 feet, 10 feet tall. It's brilliant. Starts out kind of yellow, goes to orange. They're a very pretty plant, and then they call it staghorn because once the branches kind of have this fur look on them, kind of like an elk or a deer. It gets that fuzziness on the branches, and it's brown, so that's why they call it staghorn sumac. And the last, but this is called dwarf burning bush, and anyone, especially from the Midwest back east, is really familiar probably with dwarf burning bush. It's a deciduous shrub. It's known for getting the intense orangish to red fall color on it. Takes full sun. Here it's probably on average going to be 4 to 6 feet tall, probably not really much taller than that. But yeah, it's kind of a staple fall color plant throughout the country, especially in the colder areas. So works well here, Flagstaff, and then like I say, if you're from other parts of the colder parts of the country, it's used a lot in the Midwest and back east. But you can just see how colorful it can get, especially if you live up in the mountains more. The more sun you can give it, the better fall color it's going to have. What?
Staghorn. We just moved here from New York, and I had staghorn, and up there they're considered weeds.
Right.
And we can't really get rid of them. But I never get it to turn the bright red.
Here?
No, at home. And I mean, we got the cold weather,
Question was, is it a staghorn fern that wasn't turning the bright red that they can? Were they? They were older. Were they like native ones from there, or? Yeah, you know, there are some. How old was it? 40. Did you ever cut it back, get new growth, things like that?
Yeah, but it still didn't.
Still, yeah. I don't really, there are some different varieties of them. Some are more known, have more of a yellow than going into that orangish red. But I don't really have an answer for that.
How much water does this burning bush?
Question is, how much water does the burning bush need? It's I wouldn't call it drought tolerant. I just call it moderate water use. So definitely needs water in the summertime, a couple times a week. Keep in mind too, we can have dry winters. We don't get much moisture, so it's important to your irrigation is probably shut down or will be shut down soon. So it's really important if we're not getting good snows, good measurable rain, where the ground is visibly, dig in there and it's moist down to a foot. If we're not getting that type of moisture in the winter, it's really important that you do water your plants here. Even if they're deciduous, you still want to give them moisture through the winter time, because naturally they would have moisture through the winter time. So you may have to drag out the hose sometimes and do some good deep watering twice a month, if we're in a dry spell in the winter time. So always keep that in mind, especially if you have conifers, big conifers. They really benefit from a good snowpack, snow, rain to keep them healthy through the winter time. So just about anything you have, really, it's just if we're not getting that moisture, make sure you do water in the winter time. It's really important.
Jim, can I interrupt for just 1 second? We're about 3/4 of the way through the class. I'm going to start this sign-up sheet around. Okay, if you give us your email, there's a couple of different handouts that Ken has set up to be sent out that are related to the seasonal color. If you have already signed up, you still need to sign the sheet because it only goes to those people who are at this class. For those of you online, I'm about to post the links to those, so you'll get them online here in just a moment. Okay, thank you.
My last shrubby thing I'm going to talk about is, this is called Amur Maple, Red Rhapsody Amur Maple. Wonderful fall color shrub. It is larger, so you need a little bit of room in your yard for it. It's gonna, in the Northwest, you'll see these things get up to 20 feet probably or so. They're not going to get that tall here, most likely, but more like probably up to 10 feet here. But when these things pop off with their color, the amber maples, they are very, very showy, and it does really well here. It does need more water. I'd say it's a little more than high moderate use, needing water. Yeah, they kind of speak for themselves when these go into color. And this would be like something you kind of put in the background or to the side somewhere that when it's showy, it's big, so you don't want to hide the rest of your yard or hide other things. So yeah, amber maple, it's one of the prettiest, I think, fall big shrubs.
Blossoms.
Excuse me?
Blossoms.
It's inconspicuous, so nothing showy. And I put on the list there grasses. I think grasses are highly underused in our area here. I mean, you see how some of them are used in the Midwest, back east, the Northwest. They're really used very effectively back there in big, more massive plantings. But they don't all have to be mass plantings. But I think the first one I put on your list there is the Carl Forster feather reedgrass. There weren't any here to show you, but there's if you're driving around the landscape, I've seen some beautiful ones lately in town here. you know, they got nice green foliage, and then they have these real tall, buff-colored plumes that come up about this tall. And if you see a grass like that, you know, it's probably the Carl Forster featherweed grass. It's the common name on it, but it's a really good grass for this area. It does really well here. It takes the heat, takes the cold, and has these beautiful, you know, a lot of grasses. They're pretty with their foliage. Some of them have, you know, are known for their plumes that they put out. So, so that's not this one here, sorry, but that's just wanted to mention that one.
What's the name of that one again?
Coral featherweed grass, Carl Forster.
And it's on this list?
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh,
Yeah, I put the botanical name on there too, but so anyway, that's a really good grass for our area, and it works really well in pots. I've used it in big containers before. And the thing with a lot of the grasses is you can leave the plumes on all through winter because it kind of gives you some texture, gives you some color through the winter time too when you leave the plumes on, even after they've kind of gone dead, brown, you know, they move back and forth in the wind, etc. So that's another benefit of the grasses. They have that winter benefit. Then in the late winter, you cut them back close to the ground, then they come back up. Question?
Yes. Is the plant that you were talking about, the Carl Forster, is that what's at your entrance? Visible into your parking lot? Isn't there a big grass there?
I think it's going to be the
Campus grass.
Amber's.
pampas grass. Yeah.
Yeah, that is.
Does the Carl Forster seed, is it spread by seed or is it?
Does the Carl Forster, question is, does the Carl Forster spread by seed? I have not heard of that one being a invasive species doing that. It's a good question because some grasses, you know, are known for that. And you know, Mexican feathergrass is one that comes to mind. That's a very beautiful grass, but it reseeds real readily and can be invasive. Question?
ours are not producing plumes. Is there a reason for that?
The Carl Forster? Without knowing what type of grass you have, I mean,
Do all grasses produce plumes?
all grasses produce some type of plume, whether they're showy plume or if you want to get a picture, bring it in, you know, maybe some of the staff can identify it and, you know, go from there. Is it getting a lot of shade? Is it sun?
It's in the shade.
So yeah, that's what I do is take a picture, bring it in and see what the staff.
Do they need sun?
Most grasses do better in sun, yeah. I mean, there are some there's obviously you go in the forest, there's a lot of understory grasses that, but, yeah, without knowing what type it is, etc. So this one here is called regal mist, woolly grass. Common name here for it, you hear a lot, is deer grass. This is a fabulous grass for our area, and if you kind of drive around especially if you drive through some of the newer subdivisions, you'll, you know, because they're planting more of this more drought-tolerant type grasses like this, you'll see things like the Carl Forster reedgrass, the deer grass, you know, they've been planted now in some of these subdivisions for 2 or 3 years, and they're really showing they're really shining right now, showing their thing. But yeah, this one's known for, gets these vibrant, just nice pink hue. Small, you know, they're small in themselves. The plumes are small, but they kind of, as a mass, they're quite showy. But yes, one of my favorite grasses for fall is the deer grass. Another one that you cut back late winter, you cut it back again, then it comes back up. But you can leave it all through the winter. They get about, with the plumes, when they're pluming, they might get up to 3 feet. The grass itself is probably no more than a couple feet, and you get the plumes that come up a little bit above it. And as far as I know, it's not, I'm not saying it can't reseed, but it's not, I haven't heard of being invasive or anything like that. But we kind of have one thing going on our side when it comes to some of this invasive stuff. We live in a place that doesn't get a lot of water. So, you know, once you get away from the watering area, a lot of times it's just too dry a lot of times of the year for anything to reseed a lot of times on a lot of stuff. Not saying always. And This is the dwarf pampas grass. This picked this from the plumes out front there. I was hoping to have a plant, but they sold out of them because they've been really popular the last month because they're all showing everywhere in the landscape now. So yeah, it's called dwarf pampas grass. A couple important things about this. This is the dwarf one. It's called pumila. The seeds are sterile, so this does not reseed. It's a big problem with the regular pampas grass that my grandma planted, my parents planted even, that they're very tall too. I mean, they can be 10, 12 foot big mounds, and they're huge. But those seeds were very invasive. They could reseed into a lot of places, especially riparian areas, the waterways and stuff like that. So rarely do you see anyone selling regular pampas grass anymore. It's just not the right thing to do. In some states it's outlawed to carry pampas grass unless it's a sterile variety, etc. So the only variety that we grow is the pumila, which is the dwarf one, which stays more of a manageable shape. Like I don't know if you notice the ones coming in front, but when you drive out, you'll see the ones out in the front by the front gate. It's a pretty manageable size. You still need room for it, but it's not overpowering, not too big. Question?
What is riparian?
Oh, good question. What is riparian? Riparian is pretty much, if you drive around, and are you familiar with the big cottonwood trees you see everywhere? That, they're 80, 100 feet tall, 50 foot, Those primarily grow only in a riparian area. So a riparian area is basically, it's where water flows. It doesn't have to flow year-round. A lot of times it is a year-round system, but even if you don't see water on top of it, in a riparian area, I guarantee you dig down 2, 3, 5 feet, there's water flowing underneath there. So it supports a lot of trees, like the big cottonwoods, because they need thousands of gallons a day. Your willows, things like that. So that's a riparian area. They're very delicate ecosystem. But a riparian area too is full of wildlife. You got everything from skunks, raccoons, salamanders, coatimundi. It's a lot of wildlife in riparian areas. There definitely are more treasure. What's that?
More reptiles?
Sure, especially, more reptiles, any type of snake, especially garter snakes.
Just rattlers.
Yeah, well,
6 houses away from the street?
rattlers are, they can be in riparian areas, they can be in dry areas, where food is, any snake will go, so. Then we'll talk about a couple of vines that are really known for their fall color. This is called Boston ivy. Once again, if you're anywhere, especially the East Coast, Midwest, Boston ivy is, you see a lot of everywhere. Boston ivy can cling on its own of a brick wall, of a rock, of stucco, anything like that. So it's not something you want to put on a stucco wall, because you will lose your stucco at some point. But if it's on a brick wall, it's not as bad. But trade them along a fence. I've seen them just used as a ground cover even. But the Boston ivy is just starting to show its color now. But I mean, you just have a wall of red wherever you put it. Once it spreads out, it just turns a beautiful, very dependable red fall color to it. It grows fast. It can probably grow out 10. Well, it can ultimately probably grow 40, 50 feet if you were to let it. But in a reasonable amount of time, it's going to grow to 10 feet or so.
So it could go down a cliff?
It could grow down the cliff. Yeah.
Good.
It's not like you got a cliff. I get that. You got a cliff.
We have an ugly cliff.
So do we.
Well, then you can hide an ugly cliff. There's lots of plants you can
Yeah.
use to do that with. And now, this does go deciduous though, so
Oh,
you will have your ugly
so
cliff.
the ugly winter?
Winter, yeah. But you're not out in the winter as much, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many people are from, say, warmer areas of the country. You're not used to deciduous stuff. A lot of people don't, I don't want anything that loses its leaves, etc. But There's a lot of nice plants that, they do lose their leaves, but they're such great plants the rest of the year with fall color, or just the way they look, or the flowers. So, just don't be afraid of using deciduous. You're not out in your yard that much in the winter here. I mean, it's cold enough to prevent you from, sitting out there and pondering generally. So.
Yeah, I'm concerned about how do you clean it up with all those leaves.
Yeah,
on
it's
a
something you
cliff.
have to keep in mind. It may be an area you don't have to worry about it, but just depending where this cliff is, if it's right next to your main part of your backyard, yeah, then you have to worry about it. Whereas a cotoneaster that we talked about earlier, it can drape down, and it's not going to be as messy. So. But anyways, Boston ivy, great fall plant for color. This is called Virginia creeper. There are species, varieties of this species that are actually native to, there's Parthenosis that's native to Arizona as well, in riparian areas. This is, if you're seeing a lot of red vining color right now, probably 90% chance this is what you're seeing is a Virginia creeper. And they're just peaking right now, and probably after this coming freeze, this coming week, the color will be gone from it. I use this on a fence in my yard. I have probably 50, 80 feet of this that I put on a 4-foot fence to keep my dog from seeing things to bark at. But it, it just seems to grow on its own on a chain link fence. I might go out there a little bit, take some of the longer new shoots and kind of weave them through, but overall it tends to find its way by itself along a chain link fence and just makes a beautiful carpet of green on the fence in the summertime. Has flowers on it too. They're okay. I mean, they're not real showy, but you do notice them. Then it gets red berry or blueberries in August, late August, early September. I'll notice the blueberries start to show on there. The birds eat those, and then it goes into a nice orange fall color phase, usually starting October. So yeah, that's one of my favorite vines for fall color is this. And then trees, which you probably all thought that's what I was going to talk about today, was trees. This is called, bring it over there. It's not tracking me. This is autumn blaze maple. This is probably, there's several different, deciduous maple trees that have been used here. This in the last 20 years is becoming the real standby for a red maple tree here because it does really well in our climate. It takes the dryness that we have in the springtime and early summer. It does very well here. Tolerates what winds we have here pretty well. So this is, like I say, if you're seeing a red maple blooming, especially if it's a little on the younger side, maybe only 20 feet tall, 30 feet tall at the most, it's probably a red maple. There are a few other varieties of red maples being used as well. But
Do those go more vertical or do they spread?
it starts out kind of a pyramid teardrop as it ages, and this is what a lot of trees, when I say ages, we get up to that 20, 30-year-old time, then they'll start to crown out and have more of a head to them. But in the early years, they tend to be probably a little more columnar teardrop shape to them. But very dependable fall color for us here for a tree. It just always has a good display of orange or red color on them. Like I say, you've probably been noticing them they might be kind of phasing out now, but about 2 weeks ago they were just spectacular everywhere. And you're probably still seeing some in color.
Jim, you're good at subtracting.
All right, new track, cool. This is Raywood ash. Probably starting to see some of these show color in the landscape. Raywood ash is known for its burgundy red foliage color. Now your ashes, they are going to head out, canopy out earlier than say maple would be. So at a younger age, we'll start to see that they kind of canopy out. But the ashes do really well in our area. They take our dryness in the spring and summer. They take our cold, they take our heat, they love our monsoon rains. They do really, really well here. On average, they're a 30-foot, it's a tree, so you need space for it. It's going to get 30, 40 feet tall, spread out as well. It does very well, very dependable fall color for a tree. There's one called Patmore, which I think I put on the list, has yellow foliage to it. And the one I didn't put, you can write it down, is just the Arizona ash. It was very popular too. Might be a little more drought tolerance, a little bit smaller of an ash tree. It's not as refined looking as the redwood or the Patmore, in my opinion, but it's a very good tree for our area with yellow fall foliage to it, the Arizona ash, which is native to our area. You see it more in riparian areas. And all the ashes are going to need water to look well and do well. Good deep waterings. Good amounts of water, less frequently, so it goes deep. That's what you want with trees. Robot problem. So this one's called Crimson Spire Oak. The next two oaks I'm going to show you they're a little more of a columnar, narrow type oak. This one here, it's like I say, it's going to be more columnar. It's going to be probably 20 feet wide, at the most eventually. It's not going to have a big canopy on it, etc. So it's more designed for smaller yards and acreage and stuff like that. Because most places don't really have, where you can put a big tree that's going to get a 50 feet tall, 50-foot canopy, things like that. So some of the oaks that are being developed now are a little more narrow, taller, columnar look to them. This one has brilliant fall crimson color to it, just kind of solid red and crimson to it. So it's a beautiful oak. Then we have Kindred. This one's called Kindred Spirit. This one's even more narrow, more like a 10, 12 foot width to it. So very narrow, more column to it. And it also gets nice fall color to it as well. So these are kind of the two oaks that are being used a lot more now. Just they're smaller, they're better for today's smaller yards, etc. And they grow fairly, a little bit. They grow fairly fast as well too. Then we have, in Arizona, a lot of people, when they think of fall color, they think of aspen trees. This one's here kind of lost its leaves, but Amy, who works here, she was just showing me some, she went up to Aspen Creek last week, and she was showing me the pictures of all the aspens that were up there. So, aspen is native to our area, more up in the higher mountains, where it's a little bit wetter. That's where you'll see native aspen groves in the Bradshaw Mountains. Go up to Flagstaff, of course, you'll see them all over the place up there. But aspens are native to parts of our area, in the mountain areas. You can use them. They do well here. If you plant them, they do need water. That is, you have to give them good amounts of water. They'll do well here in the Prescott area. My neighbor has a couple that are they're gorgeous. They're just starting to turn color now. And aspens are best to be planted. They look best in groups, so like groups of 3 you plant them. That's how they look best rather than just a single. So just, they just be 3 or 5 feet apart or whatever, just planted in a group of 3. I think that's how aspens look best. And of course, they're known as they get older, the white mark is another attribute to it as well. But obviously, people really like them for the fall, when they got the nice golden yellow foliage and they kind of shimmer in the wind, and even when they're summertime, when they just shimmer in the wind and make it's a beautiful noise they make when they do that. So, yeah, another good one.
Is this one shred?
Yeah, good question. The question is, does it spread? Aspens do spread there, spread by underground roots, yeah. Once again, planting it in your yard or somewhere, you're not going to really notice that much, just because you don't have as much water. Whereas, higher up, like in Aspen Creek, in that area, they tend to grow in areas that get more snow, dampness throughout the year. And they tend to, and that's how they expand their growth, is by spreading on the ground, etc.
Are they impeded when there's a lot of boulders or rocks?
Are they impeded
With-
when there's boulders or rocks?
Right, with that root system?
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. But you mean the plant you plant, or are you just talking about the spreading?
Well, if there's a lot of boulders and you find a little dirt to stick them in.
Oh, okay, you're talking about the plant, that's your plant.
Well, and then how do the roots?
Well, you
Generate
you'd
with
really
all
be,
the
you'd be
boulders.
amazed what roots can do. So, unless it's just a solid granite that you had to chip away at and dig out, you'd be amazed where roots can find nooks and crannies to
Okay.
get through, etc.
I like those.
But they do need water. That's the main thing you've got to keep in mind with aspens. They're going to need a little more water. If you rain harvest with barrels and stuff like that, it's a great way to keep your aspens, give them a little more water is harvesting their rain barrels, and you just kind of dedicate that water towards a higher water use plant, like I say an aspen. That way you're not using as much water. So that's kind of what I do with some of my higher use water plants is I just supplement with more rainwater. That's what I do. So at the end, I did just to put native species, just because as you're driving around, if some of you are new, you may not be sure what you're seeing out there in the areas. So, I just kind of made a list of some of the most common ones that are showing fall color in the fall that are native. So like we already talked about the Fremont cottonwood, which is, you go to Willow Lake, places like that, they're all over the place there. That's what you're seeing there. Willows, you're going to see a lot of willows in the riparian areas right now, showing color. There's a couple of varieties. Arizona walnut, called black walnut, is another showy. I have a couple. I live in, like say, Mountain Club, and I have 2 or 3 native black walnuts. And they haven't shown their color yet. But after this week, I know they're going to start showing when we get this real cold. But they have a nice yellow color to the leaves in the fall time. Native chokecherry, I kind of talked a little bit on that. You'll see that mixed in with pinyon and oak habitats and pine habitat too. It's a yellow fall color to it. And if you're out in, say, Williamson Valley, Dewey, places like that, where it's kind of more chaparral-ish, so to say, you have scrub oak, manzanita, and if you're seeing a plant out there that's just got this blotch of orange-red color to it, a shrub, they're probably maybe 3 to 6 feet tall, you're probably seeing skunk bush sumac is probably what you're seeing. They grow more in the drier areas, like I say, with the scrub oak, pinyon pines. That's where they tend to grow. And sometimes you can find those in the nursery as well when we can get them. But it's a great native plant, good fall color to it. Then, of course, if you're out hiking, be wary of very pretty, very showy, but the poison oak is out there. A little easier to actually spot this time of year because it probably is going into its fall color phase with a nice orange and red, which is very pretty. But it is poison oak that you may be seeing if you're hiking out in riparian areas near creeks and streams. And then we do have a native grape, Arizona grape, and it can have a nice showy yellow fall foliage to it color as well. It can produce fruit. I've never seen fruit on it, but I've seen pictures of fruit on it, so it can, but I haven't maybe the critters are eating it before I see it with some grapes on it actually. But it's a great native riparian vine in our area, the native Arizona grape. That's, any other questions?
We had a gamble, I think I had
Oh,
a copy.
thank you. You got my copy, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, what I realized I wanted to put on here was Gamble Oak, and as I was driving over here, I thought, oh, I hate to put a Gamble, so I wrote it in my copy. She's got my copy. Gamble Oak, if you're up in the mountains, especially a little bit more where the pine trees are, and you're seeing bigger, tall yellow clumps of foliage up there, you're probably seeing Gamble Oak is most likely what you're seeing right now. If you go up onto Mingus Mountain right now, you'll probably start to see a lot of Gamble Oak up there right now in full color. So, thank you.
Does Monrovia produce a manzanita?
Question: does Monrovia produce a manzanita? No, we do not produce a manzanita. No. Manzanita is very tricky to grow for growers. There's a few growers that have it mastered out there. We probably kill it with too much love, to be honest. But even for garden centers, once they get it in, it's it's a really tricky thing for garden centers to keep alive in a container here. They just don't overwater it, etc. It's a tricky plant. It's a great plant. They're almost impossible to dig up in the wild. If it's on private property, it would be legal. I don't think it's legal in national forest, but if you're on somebody's property and they have a little manzanita maybe this tall, you might be able to dig it up successfully and transplant. But if it's this tall, I almost guarantee you, you're not going to be able to dig it up and transplant it. It's amazing. It's such a plant that does extremely well out in the harsh environment, but it's a tough one to propagate and grow.
We do sell it here.
Yeah.
And I think the only variety we sell, if I remember correctly, is the Kinnikinnick.
No. Kinnikinnick is a real low spreading one, but in the spring, usually they can get some good, I know they had like 200 or 300 here last, maybe not that many. They had 100 or 200.
We do have them in season.
Yeah. They had two or three varieties last spring here. So Waters does get them in every year. Yep.
What about Cliff Rose and Apache Plume?
What about Cliff Rose and
Those here?
Patchy Plume? Yeah, they do carry that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spring?
Usually more in the spring, early summer. It's a good native shrubs. Yeah. That one is a little more easy to get. Yeah. They don't always look like much in a container. You got to keep that in mind. But you get them in the ground, and they start doing their thing. They look really well. One last thing. We have our first really good freeze probably coming up Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. So depending where you live, I live in Mountain Club. I'm expecting probably 27, 28 degrees. I tend to be colder than the airport. It tends to be a little bit warmer, so kind of depending, airport may say 30 something, kind of depending where you live, low area up higher in the mountains, we could have a pretty good freeze, our first good freeze. So, make sure your irrigation is either turned off, insulate it well, etc. If you want to do protect things a little bit longer, you can put some frost out on some things. I've already been doing that in my vegetable garden actually a couple times already when it was hinting at freezing. I got down to 30 once already, but I had frost cloth. But we've had these really nice warm days, so it really didn't hurt the garden at all. But yeah, just keep in mind we've got a good freeze coming up, so if there's some stuff you want to protect, either get it in the house, cover it up. They do sell shade cloth stuff here. You would insulate, so you can use that on if, like I say, you just want to kind of keep things going a little bit longer, don't want them to get frozen yet. You can use things like that. This is especially beneficial. It's a good thing to always have because we get into springtime, you plant stuff, and we get those late freezes. It's nice to have this on hand, then not have to go get it. Thank you very much. I'll be around here for a bit. If you have any other questions, just pull me aside.